but I did get a copyright claim. So I thought I would better be safe than sorry. So I did trim those videos out. I hope it shouldn't take too much away from the lecture when I do that. So a couple of other quick announcements for you. You have a quiz that we'll post on Sunday and will be due the following Sunday. So make sure that you get that in. When I send the links for the YouTube videos for Wednesday and today, I will also make sure to remind you about the quiz and any other deadlines that we have coming up. So for those of you that are joining me on Zoom today, we are doing an in-class demonstration to start things off once we get done talking about attention. So for those of you that are here in class, you can write your responses on a sheet of paper, on a scrap piece of paper. You don't have to get it ready yet. You don't have to get it ready yet because we've still got a little bit of attention to talk about. But for those of you that are joining me on Zoom, you can enter your responses into a Word document. You can write it on paper and take a picture of it and email it to me. I would like to collect the data because I'm going to collect your responses and see what your data look like in comparison to the data from this very famous experiment.
Can we just text it to you on Discord?
I suppose you can, but we're doing like 16 different lists. So if you want to do it in a DM, I think that will work just fine. So if you want to DM me that on Discord, I'm cool with that. But otherwise, it's like 16 lists. And I'm just like, that's a lot. But I'll give you some more details about that very soon. You are not going to like me today because this experiment is hard. But it's not for a grade. The act of doing it and turning in your work will get you 10 points. This is designed to be difficult, so do not kick yourself if you find that you have a hard time with this, okay? All right, so before we begin that, we do need to finish our discussion of attention. So let's finish that up first. So, I know we definitely didn't look at that. All right. So the last time that we were here, we were talking about other types of disorders of attention. We discussed neglect and we discussed extinction, which can occur with patients that suffer from unilateral neglect. In these instances, as I talked about last time, if you present them with a stimulus that is on the opposite side of where their damage is. So if they have damage to the right parietal lobe, if you show them something in their left visual field, they will not be able to detect it if you simultaneously show them something in the right visual field. And that's because as long as their attentional load is low, they can focus. But they seem to have problems with items that compete for attention. They have difficulty separating out what they should pay attention to and what they shouldn't pay attention to. So based off of this, and a lot of this work comes from Michael Posner. That is not to be excused with the artist Mike Posner, who a couple of years ago took a pill in Ibiza, and several years before that talked about how you were cooler than him. So this is a different Michael Posner, and he basically proposed that we have two different types of attentional systems. We have one that is referred to as endogenous. So endogenous means that it's generated from within. This is something that can be controlled by the individual. It is very, very goal directed. And by and large, this happens with cues that occur in the center of a screen. So they're not going to be in a particular location. You're going to have to focus on what that cue means in the center of your visual field. Now, in contrast, you also have what is called an exogenous system. This is a system that is externally generated. So this is kind of that passive attention that I mentioned. So if the fire alarm suddenly decides to go off, your attention is automatically going to shift from listening to my lecture to listening to the fire alarm. So your exogenous system automatically shifts, Generally, it tends to work better for cues that are on your periphery because things that occur in your periphery tend to draw your attention a bit more. And this also works with stimuli that are very salient, such as your own name or something that's important to you, or for stimuli that are novel or new. I was not expecting that much. Okay, does anybody need some more time here? Okay, thank you. All right, you good? Okay. So what do these two different types of attentional systems mean for our patients that are suffering from hemifield neglect? Researchers have suggested that damage is due to our exogenous attentional system rather than our endogenous, internally generated attentional system. So part of the reasons that we know this is that research has found that goal-directed attention is still intact for people who suffer from neglect. And additionally, we have also found that they tend to have an easier time detecting a stimulus if it's predictable. Unpredictable stimuli would be novel or salient. That would fall under the purview of our exogenous system. When stimuli are predictable, patients with neglect have an easier time with this. Now, both the endogenous and exogenous system the information from both of these systems does have to eventually combine. And sometimes our neglect patients have a problem with this because neglect patients will suffer from damage to the posterior parietal cortex, particularly on the right. And this is because in the posterior parietal cortex, this is an area that's really critical for attention. And we typically find that between our endogenous and our exogenous system, the stimulus that is the most activated will become the focus of our attention. The one that has the most value will become what we focus on. So here's a really cool way that you can actually reduce neglect that you may not be aware of. This is what is referred to as Prism Adaptation. So all we have to do to potentially shift somebody with neglect's attention over to that neglected hemifield is by shifting their vision with a pair of prism glasses. And so the idea is that neglect patients are typically going to have a little bit of a rightward bias. They tend to not pay attention to information in their left visual field. So what we do is we fit them with these special glasses that shift information from the right over, that it shifts their information closer to the right. So there we go. So what we're going to see is that it's going to shift information over to them. And so what we find for our neglect patients, so here they have to copy this figure. Here's what it looks like before. And you can kind of see that that is a very characteristic rightward bias. Here's what it looks like after the glasses and late. So you can kind of see that in this particular instance, shifting their attention over to that neglected field with the help of these glasses leads to better pointing skills and more copying of details in the left visual field. We also tend to find this when they point. If you ask them to point to their midline, you can see that they have a tendency to shift over to the right. Notice that in post-test, after wearing these glasses, they're able to actually shift their pointing over to the midline. We can also look at this with normal controls. Now, because these glasses induce a rightward shift, what we'll find with our controls is that without the prism, they point pretty accurately toward the midline, but when you introduce these glasses, they shift over to the right. And you can actually see that their drawings reflect that fact as well. So how does this work? So when you put these glasses on, all of a sudden, you have to slow down and stop and think. How many of you have been on a diverging diamond interchange before? Joplin has a couple, Springfield has a couple, and the idea is that with this interchange, you don't have to worry about big traffic lights, but for a brief period of time, you're driving on the wrong side of the road. The idea behind those kind of interchanges is when you drive on the wrong side of the road, it forces you to slow down and think. You can't approach things automatically anymore. And the same is kind of true for these glasses. By shifting your focus a little bit more rightward, you have to slow down, utilize your top-down attention, your endogenous attention, and use that information to basically shift your attention toward the left visual field. So that's pretty cool, and it doesn't really take that much to fix it. Although for somebody with neglect, you would probably have to wear these like all the time. That could probably be an issue. All right, everybody good? I will wait just a second. All right, so now we are going to begin our experiment, and there will be instructions for you. So hopefully this won't be too difficult. If I could just quit running my mouse into everything, maybe I'm the one that needs the Prism goggles. Okay, so what we are about to do is kind of based on a very, very famous experiment. And yes, I did borrow this from the internet because borrowing from somebody who has made it available is a lot easier than making one on your own. And if people are sharing those materials, that's very helpful. So I have made sure to include sound. Those of you that are zooming in today, you need to let me know if you can hear the sound, because the sound is going to be critical. So first I'll check that I'm sharing computer sound, which I am. So here's what we're going to do. So this is a pretty famous study that we're going to talk about later today and probably on Monday. We are going to do something called a full report procedure that was originally developed by George Sperling in 1960. So this is used to study iconic memory, which is another way of saying our visual sensory memory. So you're going to see an array of letters appear on the screen. So here's the deal. You are not going to be able to catch all of these. These are going to be presented quickly enough that you will not be able to get them all. If you do get them all, awesome, but you probably won't. Do not kick yourself for this. We are looking at something that is very, very low capacity or low, that's very short in duration. And then you're going to have to recall the whole array. So to give you an idea of how fast the arrays will be presented, here are some examples. So the first one is going to be displayed for 1,000 milliseconds, so that's 1 second. The second sample will be displayed for 500, which is about half a second, which is about the speed that I use in my experiments. And then the last sample will be displayed for 100 milliseconds. That is 1/10 of a second. And that's the speed that we're going to be working with. So here's what each of them look like. So we're going to see the first one for 1 second. We're going to see the second one for half a second, and we're going to see the third one for 1/10 of a second. So whenever you're ready, I will click the start button and you will see each of those. You don't have to write anything down. I'm just trying to give you an idea of how fast you need to grab these. So that wasn't so bad. This is gonna be fun. Okay, so now we're gonna do the memory trials. All of the arrays are gonna be presented for about 100 milliseconds. Obviously, this is gonna be a little bit different depending on the computer speed. I know you can do it, desktop, you're so good. So take a sheet of paper. For those of you that are zooming in, you can write this on paper. You can do this by DMing me through Discord. You can put this in a Word document or whatever document you want, but take out a sheet of paper and number it from 1 to 10. You do not need to write down the array. I just want you to remember the numbers from the array. And by the way, we will go over these at the end so you can count how many you got. So I don't have to do it for you. Yay. Making you do my work for me. Okay, so go ahead and number a sheet of paper. For those of you that are turning in paper today, put your name on it. I actually want to give you credit for this. And for those of you that are zooming in, please put your name on whatever it is you send me. Even if you're sending it through email, put your name on the attachment. I appreciate that. If you're zooming, if you're using Discord, I know who you are. All right, everybody good? Okay, so let me explain what's going to happen. So before each trial, you're going to see a fixation cross on the center of the screen. That's just going to remind you where you need to be looking. We do this a lot in visual memory studies. We want you to kind of stay at the center of the screen. Keep your eyes focused on that fixation cross when the array flashes on the screen. You need to be looking at the center of the screen wherever possible. So the array of letters is going to disappear. I don't need you to write down the entire array. I want you to write down as many letters as you can remember, and I don't care what row they're from, okay? I disagree. Even if you can't remember, you need to write a letter in each position. You don't need to do that. Just write the letters that you can remember. And here's a quick little reminder, the same letter can appear more than once. And then once everybody is ready, we will move on to the next trial. So I will give you probably about 15 to 20 seconds. If anybody needs more time, I will ask before we move forward. So those of you that are on Zoom, feel free to pop in the chat, the Discord, and let me know if you need more time when I ask. Are we ready? Is anybody not ready? Okay, so remember, you're going to see an array of letters. Write down as many letters as you can in any order that you want. and we will begin. So we're starting with trial number 1. Okay. Does anybody need some more time? Okay. Yeah. We are moving on to trial number 2. Okay. Does anybody need some more time? Okay. We are moving on to trial number 3. All right, are we ready for the next one? Anybody need more time? Okay, trial number 4. Okay. All right. Is everybody ready? I started to lose track of the trials. Anybody need some more time? Okay, here comes the next one. All right. Anybody need some more time? Yeah, this is gonna get really repetitive, I know. All right, we're moving on to the next one. All right, are we ready for the next one? All right, here we go. All right. Okay, does anybody need some more time? Okay, are we ready for the next one? All right, everybody ready? All right, here we go. Next time I'm gonna sound like Mario. Here we go. No, I won't. All right, is everybody ready for the next one? I think we're pretty close to being done. All right, here we go. Okay, so no, go ahead and score them. So give yourself 1 point for each letter that you recalled. I don't care about the array position. Just give yourself a point for each letter that you recalled. You don't need to worry about getting your mean score. I will take care of that for you. So just score how you did on each of the 10 arrays. And then I will collect this data and I will do some cool stuff with it, like make a chart. All right. Does anybody need some more time to score?
Yes.
Okay. Geneva, I just got your DM. Those are some good numbers. And then we're going to be doing a little bit more. We ain't done yet. This is just part 1. Part 2 is going to be tougher. This is why I became a professor, folks, because I get to give you these things after having spent so long doing them myself or programming them myself. Okay, so if you're still calculating your numbers, go ahead. But so here's what I kind of want, and I kind of want an informal poll. If you're on Zoom, you can hit me up in the chat. So for those of you that are here in class and those of you that are on Zoom, so how many of you, throw out a number that was pretty common for you to grab out of the array? I saw a lot of 4s and 5s. Did anybody get more than 5 on an array? What'd you get, Robin?
6.
You got 6? Nice. Did anybody get up to 9? Okay. Geneva, you got 5. Did anybody get more than 6? Okay. So how did we feel about that task? It's hard, isn't it? Wait, let me see what we got. I didn't have letters come up for 2 to 8. Oh no, I'm so sorry. That's okay. Turn in what you have. Hopefully this next one will work. And hey, if this doesn't work for you, Leah, this should work on the live stream unless I get copyright claimed. But I don't care because I'm not monetized, so I'll just keep it in. And you can watch this again and turn in those if you want, but either one of those will be fine. I'm not going to hold this against you if it wasn't working. All right. So now we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm about to make this a little bit tougher, but it's not actually going to be tougher. Okay. So this is what we're going to do next. This is the next thing in Sperling's experiment. So you're going to do what's called a partial report procedure. So rather than have you grabbing everything from each row, you're going to look at the array, and then you're going to get a tone. The tone is going to tell you what row you have to remember. So the top, if you hear a high-pitched tone, that's your reminder to remember the top row. If you hear a medium-sounding tone, you need to recall the middle row. If you hear a low tone, you'll recall the bottom row. So here's what's interesting. I'm going to show you the array, and then you're going to hear the tone. You will not know ahead of time which one you're going to get. Ash, you seem very excited by that prospect. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough, but generally your sensory memory is going to be a lot better than you tend to give it credit for. So you're going to do the same thing that you did before. The only thing that is going to differ is that instead of recalling from any row, I want you to recall from the row that is cued. So really, you only have 4 items that you have to remember, but they're very specific 4. So you are going to hear a high-pitched tone means you write down the 4 letters in the top row. A medium-pitched tone means to write down the 4 letters in the middle row, and a low-pitched tone means to write down the 4 letters in the bottom row. I would say for these, if you don't know all 4, guess. You might be right. And again, just as a reminder, the same letter may appear more than once in an array as well as within a row. So again, if you don't know, probably doesn't hurt to guess. And by the way, we are going to listen to each of these tones. Those of you that are on Zoom, you need to let me know if you can hear these tones or not, because if you can't, this isn't going to work. like my class, like people who are in person will hear, but if you're zooming in and you can't, just turn in what you have from the whole report procedure or wait until the live stream comes out. You should be able to hear both of those. Okay. So here we're going to listen to the tones. We're going to listen to these in different orders. And so I'm going to play them in different orders so you can kind of hear each. So again, if you're on Zoom, I'm going to go ahead and open up the chat. Let me know if you can't hear it. Well, I can't hear that. Wait. Okay. Did anybody on Zoom hear that?
Yes.
Okay, great. Fantastic. Here's our low. This is going to sound weird. I call it the bucket sound. The low tone is the bucket. Here's our medium. So again, here's high, low, medium, medium, high, low. Do you feel like you'd be able to recognize all of those if you heard them? Okay, good. It's already hard, to be honest. I know. The hardness is the point. We are looking at very basic low-level processes whose responses are very hard to fake. And that's why I love cognitive psychology. All right. So here's how this is going to work. So again, number your sheet of paper. Please indicate that this is partial report. Okay. So again, same rules apply. You're going to have that fixation cross in the center of the screen. I want you to focus on that. You're going to see the array of letters. And here's what's really critical. Don't try to predict which one you're going to get. Just passively watch. After the array disappears, you're going to hear one of the tones. At that point, recall only the letters from the row that is cued by the tone. So if you hear that medium pitch tone, recall from the middle row. If you hear the high pitched tone, recall from the top row. If you hear the bucket, recall from the bottom row. Okay? Write 4 letters, even if you don't remember all 4, you could be right. You could be right. And then we'll do this 10 trials, and then you'll get a chance to score what you put. And again, if you're having trouble seeing these letters, you can either turn in the data that you have, or you can wait until I post the live stream on YouTube later this evening. Are we ready? Okay, this is going to be hard, but I know you can do it. That's top row, y'all. Would you like me to also indicate what row that is? Would that help? Okay, I will. All right. Are we ready for the next one? Okay. Middle. Okay. Everybody good so far? Okay, here's number 3. That's top. Okay, so we're moving on to trial number 4. Are we ready? Okay. Bottom. Okay, so we're moving on to trial number 5. Here we go. Bottom. Okay, so we're halfway done. You're doing great. You all probably hate me. That's okay. I'm willing to take the pain. It's all right. Okay, so we're going on to trial number 6. Are we ready? All right, here we go. Middle. All right. So now we're going on to trial 7. Are we ready? All right, here we go. Bottom. Okay, we're moving on to trial number 8. We are so close. Are we ready? Okay. Top. Okay, here comes number 9. All right, are we ready? All right, trial number 9, go. Middle. All right, we're finally on our last one. Okay, is everybody ready? All right, here we go. Top. All right, so now let's go ahead and score. So here were the correct answers. Don't worry about multiplying your result. We'll talk about that later when we actually talk about this study and your data, because this took up a good chunk of class time, but I'm okay with that. So just put 0 through 4 for each item, or for each array. Leah, I just got yours. If you'd like to try it again once this is up on YouTube, you can. I'll still count what you gave me, but if you'd like to give it a shot, you might have a better chance if you see it in full on YouTube. Hopefully the YouTube actually captures it. It's your call to make.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Oh, not a problem. I know that computers can be wacky things. And also, if I'm not mistaken, you're in Reeves. And well, we all know about the Reeves Wi-Fi, y'all.
Well, I'm way off campus.
Oh, okay. Okay, so is everybody pretty much done scoring? Does anybody need some more time? Okay, while we're waiting, how was that? What did you like better? Did you like the partial report or the whole report better? Or did you hate both equally, which is also allowed? So what do we think about that? And Tori, I just got yours. Thank you. So how'd we feel? Nobody liked it. Yeah, I know. So welcome to the world of cognitive psychology, where we present things to you so quickly that you cannot possibly get them all in time. So as it kind of turns out, this sort of setup has a point. Even though the partial had less to remember, I thought it was harder. Okay, so Maya, I think that's a really interesting point. Now here's my question for you, and here's my question for all of y'all. Did most of you get between 2 and 4 items for each row and for each row in partial report? Maybe 2 to 4? Yeah? Oh, okay. So on average, so here's the thing. It seems easier with the partial report, or with the whole report, but the truth is that the partial report, if you present that cue quickly enough, you're able to grab from any row. So please put into perspective how awesome the partial report procedure is. You don't know what you're going to get ahead of time. You don't. And yet, when prompted, you can grab almost the entire row, even though you didn't know what you were going to get ahead of time. That's amazing. And even if you only got 2 of those, that's pretty impressive. So give yourself a pat on the back. This is not designed to be an easy task. This is to figure out what the capacity limits of our visual sensory memory are, and to also look at the duration. And the truth of the matter is that the duration of your visual sensory memory is super duper short, is very short. I just got yours, Geneva. That's not that bad. Don't be so hard on yourself. That was not that bad. So I'm not really going to talk about this right now, because I will talk about it later when we talk about this study. But we do have like 7 minutes left. So I'm going to go ahead and get started talking about the architecture of sensory memory, short-term memory, and Dr. G's personal favorite, working memory. This is where my area of study is. I love it. So here's what we're going to cover. We're going to cover the overall architecture of memory. So for the next several weeks, we are deep in the world of memory. So this week and next week, we're going to talk about short-term and working memory. We're going to talk about how to get information from short-term memory into long-term memory. And we're going to talk about things like memory for events, memory for facts. We're going to talk about eyewitness testimony, a bunch of fun stuff. So we're going to talk about the overall architecture of memory. I will show you the multi-store model of memory that I've already shown you by Atkinson and Shiprin. I will also show you some unitary models of memory. We'll talk about short-term memory, and then we'll talk about working memory. So before we get started, so we memory folks like to use special terms for the different processes that we involve in memory. So the first term that you're going to hear me occasionally use is a term called encoding. This is what creates a memory representation. So when you're trying to study something to remember it for later, that is a case where you are trying to encode something. The next part is storage. Storage is basically you putting away and filing away the representation so that you can use it at a later point in time. And we have some really interesting ideas about where memory tends to be. If you ask somebody to remember something, where do they tend to look? They tend to look up. We seem to have this intuitive idea that what we remember and what we store is in our heads. I think that's kind of neat. Nobody looks down at their hands. And then finally, when we need to remember something, When we are in the act of remembering, this is what we refer to as retrieval. So the item is actually being recovered and in the process of being remembered. So you're going to hear me refer to things like encoding, storage, and retrieval. Make sure that you understand what those mean. And I think what I will do, since we used so much of class time to cover some of this, I might record maybe about 20 minutes or so of this lecture so that you can watch that on your own, hopefully by Monday. We shall see. Hopefully I'll have it up tonight if that's the case. And Maya Johnston, I just got your data. Thank you very much. Okay. So now we're going to move on. We're probably just going to have time for one more slide and then we're going to call it a day. We're going to talk about the architecture of memory. Okay, so this is the one slide. Do you think that there is ultimately a difference between the memory of your first day in school versus what you just heard me say a couple of minutes ago? Do you think there's a difference? Can anybody tell me what they think that difference is? Yeah, Emma.
The memory of your first day of school probably is in your long-term memory versus what you just said is in our short-term memory.
Okay, so Emma made the distinction between short-term memory, which is a memory of what I just recently said, versus your first day of school, which tends to be in long-term memory. And that's a very intuitive kind of distinction that we make. Another distinction that I would make is this. Are you gonna really remember what I said like 5 minutes ago, 20 years from now? Tell me the truth. Probably not. You aren't hurting my feelings. It's trivial. Unless it was something really earth-shattering, you're probably not going to remember a lot of what I said. You're going to remember what you learned in this class, but you're not going to remember exactly the way that I said something. Now, on the other hand, your first day of school was probably, by all accounts, not a trivial event. And so we can make a distinction between events that are important to our lives and other events that are not. And so I hope that you're thinking a little bit about the fact that memory is not just, we don't just keep items in memory. There are important distinctions to make in terms of things like duration, importance, relevance to our life narrative. And we're going to talk about all of these for about the next 3 or 4 weeks. So I hope you will enjoy. I will make this available on YouTube for those of you who want to give me like good data. If you just want to give me what you got, that's fine too. I hope to have this data collected and analyzed and graphed all pretty for you by Monday. Don't forget about the quiz, and I will send you some YouTube links later this afternoon to the live stream. Have a wonderful weekend. Make good choices. Don't lick doorknobs, and I will see you all on Monday.